Hello, everyone, and welcome to the launch of Fluctuo's fourth editions of the European Shared Mobility Index. We may wait a few more minutes, but not so long, like 1 or 2 minutes, just to make sure that all the people who wants to attend this webinar have time to connect. So I'm Julien Chamussy. I'm the CEO of Fluctuo, and I'll be your moderator today. First off, I would like to thank you, all of us, for joining us. We have an exciting session ahead, which will last about 1 hour and 15 minutes, including the Q&A sessions at the end of the webinar. And also a quick note, just for you to know that you don't need to take screenshots of the slides that we will display. All the people who have registered for this webinar will receive the report by email right after the webinar. So no need to take screenshots if you think that some of the slides are interesting. I'm delighted to be joined today by an outstanding panel of industry leaders who will share the expertise and break down the key findings from this. Let's start with Mylène Tassy. Mylène is head of enterprise at Lyft Urban Solutions, and she's also general manager for Quebec. Lyft Urban Solutions, that some of you may know as PBSC, develops, markets, and operates shared micromobility systems in over 55 cities worldwide. And in Europe, Lyft powers bike-sharing programs such as BCMAD in Madrid or BSing in Barcelona. With over 20 years of experience in the aerospace, automotive, and tech industries, Mylène will share insights on the shared micromobility landscape across both North American and European markets. Then we have Benjamin Hindson from Aon. Benjamin is Chief Commercial Officer in charge of the digital economy with Aon Global Broking Center. He is responsible for ensuring that the best of Aon placement capabilities are brought to clients across the digital economy space. And last but not least, it's my pleasure to welcome Fredrik Hjelm, the CEO of Voi. Fredrik founded Voi Technology in Stockholm in 2018. Now Voi operates over 100,000 bikes in more than 90 cities all across Europe. And in 2024, the company achieved EBIT profitability for the first time. So I guess Fredrik is the perfect to provide insights into the evolution of shared scooters and dockless bikes today. Thank you to the panelists. And I would like to start with some context on the numbers that we're going to show you in this report. So maybe let's start with what's included and what is not included in this report. So included are all shared bikes services, station-based and dockless, shared scooters, shared mopeds, and shared cars. For the shared cars, please note that we are only counting the cars from free-floating services. We're not taking into account the services like station-based or peer-to-peer like Get Around. So we're just focusing on free-floating car sharing services. We don't take into account in this report long-term rental services, just like swap feeds or dents, for example, for bikes. We don't take into account ride-hailing services like Uber or Bolt or FreeNow or carpooling services. As regards the geographical coverage, our analysis focuses on the 27 countries from the European Union, plus the UK, Norway, and Switzerland. Please note that Russia and Turkey, which are two major markets for shared micromobility, are not included in this report. As regards the revenue, we're gonna show some numbers about revenue generated by these services. Our definition of revenue is the revenue generated by end users, and this revenue includes VAT, so on average 20% tax. But this revenue does not include the sponsoring fees or the subsidies which are being paid by cities to operators, mostly station-based bike operators, So all these fees, sponsoring or subsidies paid by cities are not included in the report. And as regards the fleet size, we have calculated fleet size as a yearly average. It means that we have taken into account the fact that there is seasonal variations, and especially in the Nordic countries where some of the services are wintering for 3 or 4 months during the year. So now that we have set the stage, maybe we can take a closer look at the key finding of this year reports. In 2024, there are 940,000 shared vehicles across Europe, generating 640 million trips and 2.1 billion euros in revenue. Shared mobility ridership has grown by 5% compared to 2023, even though the overall fleet size has actually decreased by 4%. So this tells us one key thing, is that the average vehicle turnover, or what we call the TVD, trip per vehicle per day, has increased by 10% in 2024, which is definitely a good news for the industry. But as we will see later, the performance can vary significantly from one type of vehicle to another. On the next slide, we can have a broader perspective on the European market. And what we can see here over the past 4 years is that the total fleet size of shared vehicles nearly doubled, the ridership grew by 2.5 times, and the revenue increased by 3.5 times. So how can we explain that end user revenue have been growing faster than both fleet size and ridership? Well, you might think it's because operators have raised their prices, which is actually partly true. But I think the main reasons actually lies in the breakdown of trips. If you have a closer look at 2024, the ridership for 2020, you can see that nearly 50% of all the trips were made by station-based bikes, which are typically cheaper for the end user than other services because they are subsidized by cities or local governments. In 2024, the station-based bike sharing only accounts for nearly 1/3 of the total ridership. And this is the reason why end user revenue have grown faster during these last 5 years than fleet size and ridership. If we go to the next slide, you can see a breakdown of the fleet size, of the ridership, and the revenue across the 5 different modes. So station-based bikes in light blue, free-floating bikes in dark blue, shared scooters in green, shared mopeds in orange, and shared cars in red. You can see that the revenue generated by each type of vehicle is not proportional to the number of vehicles or the number of trips made. So for example, car sharing services account only for 6 to 7% of the fleet size and the ridership, but they represent more than 1/3 of the revenue. And it's exactly the opposite for station-based bike sharing services, which account for 1/3 of the vehicles and the trips, but only 6% or only 8%, of the total revenue. Another interesting aspect is the breakdown of fleets per country, as you can see here. So in the first place, we have Germany with nearly 200,000 vehicles, 220,000 vehicles, including a significant number of scooters and cars. Germany accounts for 28% of all the scooters available in Europe, and 36% of all the free-floating cars in Europe, thanks especially to operators like Miles or Free2Move or Sixshare. In the second place of the top 5 countries, we have Poland with nearly 130,000 vehicles, which might come as a surprise for some of you, but in fact, Poland has a very active scooter sharing market, and as well as very popular station-based bike sharing services, especially in cities like Warsaw or Tri-City, Gdańsk. And in the third place of the top 5 countries, we have France, which has a more balanced model breakdown with a higher proportion of station-based bikes and free-floating bikes, and maybe fewer scooters compared to Germany or Poland. And this is, I would say, primarily due to the fact that the scooter ban was imposed in Paris in August 2023. So maybe now it's time to turn to the panelists and to ask them, what do you think of these numbers? Were you expecting to see an increase in ridership and revenue in 2024, despite the fact that the fleet size has kind of plateaued? So maybe Mylène, you want to start and comment on the numbers?
Sure. Thank you, Julien. Good afternoon, everybody. So numbers somewhat expected for sure. I mean, we certainly see that there's a higher demand for micromobility due to several factors, the usual factors: urban congestion, the maintenance of sustainability goal, and which leads to increased adoption of shared mobility. But there's maybe also a shift in customer behavior as well. They're implementing micromobility as part of their daily journey. So to go from A to D and stopping at B and C, it provides a certain flexibility to stop on the way without too much problem. We're helping them gain some time back and allowing them to be able to go about their daily chore or their work commute without too much hurdle. So it's an easy way to get things done. And obviously, as we optimize the fleet, focusing on effectivity rather than expansion, and also ensuring that the fleet are reliable and provide an asset that is deterrent to theft and vandalism, so it becomes really a worthwhile investment for city. Growing with the public policy and the electrification, so certainly micromobility is starting to be part of the infrastructure, the daily, what is available to citizens to go about their day. So expected, yes. Thank you.
Expected. Thank you. Benjamin, what's your take on these numbers?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo a lot of the comments that Mylène said. I'd also say that, again, in very expected figures, and I think it really demonstrates a maturity coming to the micromobility industry and the shared mobility industry. I think typically as the operators are moving towards more of a profitability stance rather than just kind of scale and revenue growth, we are seeing the number of vehicles being deployed coming to that plateau, particularly as the technology that's going into the vehicles is getting better, and the focus is on making sure that the assets that are out there in the field are being used as much as possible. So yeah, very, very much in line with expectations of what we're seeing.
Thank you. Fredrik, on your side, were you expecting these numbers? I mean, you're one of the operators operating free-floating bikes and free-floating scooters, so you know your numbers. But are you aligned with the global picture that we have displayed today?
Yeah, I think it's directionally right. First, a reflection on modes, and then a reflection on geographies. I mean, if we start from the modal side of things, and where I think there is untapped demand. I don't know that much about car sharing, and we see that car sharing, unfortunately, in quite a few countries is regulated away through parking fees and parking fines and so on. So put that one aside. Between e-mopeds, e-scooters, e-bikes, and station-based bikes, I mean, we continue to see a massive untapped demand in e-scooters in certain geographies, in e-bikes in most geographies. E-mopeds not that much, because it's mainly demand in Southern Europe and moped-focused countries. And then station-based bikes. I mean, to be honest, what has happened over the last 6, 7, 8 years is that with the rollout from us and others of e-scooter and e-bike fleets, many of the station-based bike systems have kind of lost its charm and attraction to the users, despite them being heavily subsidized and so on. So that's on the mode side. On the geography side, I think looking at this graph, what's sad is that Southern Europe is so weak. Because between Italy, Spain, and France, you have, what's the population between Italy, Spain, and France, Julien? 160, 180 million, yeah?
Yeah, more or less.
Exactly. So it's pretty much a third of all of Europe. And you don't see that showing up in this graph. You see it a bit in France, of course, but France should be as big as Germany, and Spain and Italy are completely falling behind.
And when we talk, when it comes to Germany,
and then I can add the last point on that. And now we're looking at absolute numbers. Once again, if you look at the Nordic markets per capita, the Nordic markets are much more penetrated with micromobility, shared mobility solutions. So they are kind of punching above their weight class.
Oops.
Correct. Yeah, we're back.
Back. I lost you.
Yeah, we lost you for like 20 seconds, but I think we're back.
Yeah. No, so Nordics punching above its weight class, Central Europe pretty much as they should, and then Southern Europe, it's way too weak. They're falling behind.
Okay, and when it comes to Germany, which is the number one country as regards the size, the fleet size, I mean, in Germany, as I mentioned, we have 120,000 scooters. Do you think that there is still room for growth in this country? And in what type of cities do you think growth opportunities are in Germany?
I mean, there are four companies with scale left. It's Voi, it's Lime, it's Teardot, and it's Bolt. I know Voi numbers, and they are super strong in Germany. I don't think they are as strong for all operators. I think we'll continue to see consolidation and shakeout in the German market.
And do you see untapped potential in Germany in maybe mid-sized cities or?
Yeah, for sure. Mid and long tail cities for sure. So Voi is expanding into those, and we've already started publicly out in the news. But we will continue that now in March and April. And the announcement we did today with the new vehicle family, 1 new e-scooter and 2 new e-bikes, 1 heavier bike and 1 lighter bike, is of course part of that, and many of those will hit the German streets in the coming weeks. Okay, excellent.
Well, now let's start about the bike sharing. Maybe we can move to the next slide. Thank you. So on this slide, so you can compare the performances of station-based bikes and free-floating bikes all across Europe. So in 2024, dockless bikes saw an 18% increase in fleet size and an impressive 58 increase in ridership, which is very impressive. I mean, on the other hand, station-based bikes also grew, but maybe at a smaller rate, with a 9% increase in fleet size and a 12% increase in ridership. If you have a look at the top cities, so you can see that Paris remains the top city in Europe with 49 million trips, the Velib station-based system, and 19 million trips for the dockless services provided by Lime and Dot. I have to say that we could have expected even higher numbers due to the Olympics Games that took place in Paris last summer. According to the operators, the Olympics were a great opportunity to promote bike sharing to all the tourists and all the athletes, but it could have been even better as regards the ridership and the revenue generated by these services. I think the reason for the lower than expected ridership is that many local people, local Parisians, they had left the city during the games. But anyway, I think it was a very great moment for the shared mobility industry to see all the people going to the venues and sport venues using shared bikes all across Paris. Looking ahead to 2025, Paris is set to make significant changes with the announcement of 3 new operators that should be done by the city of Paris within 2 or 3 months max now. Each of the lucky operator will receive a license to operate 5,000 bikes. Currently in Paris, Lime and Dot are operating altogether more than 18,000 bikes in the city. So there will be maybe a bit less vehicles in the streets of Paris in 2025 compared to 2024, but there will be 3 operators competing against each other. In the second place of the top cities, we have London, where Lime and Forest have emerged as the dominant players, pushing aside the historical Boris bikes or Santander bikes, I would say, the scheme a bit further. So all in all, we have like we were counting like 28 million trips for shared free-floating bikes and nearly 9 million trips for the station-based bike sharing system. There were several launches and expansions all across Europe in 2024, but maybe it would be interesting to highlight the Spanish market. In September 2024, the Spanish government announced a 20 million euro plan to boost and improve and expand the public bike sharing systems. And as maybe a consequence of this, the station-based, the city of Madrid decided by the end of 2024 to ban all free-floating scooters and all the free-floating bikes from the city of Madrid. Maybe the reason why is that their new station-based bike sharing system, BCMAD, has been very successful. It grew to 7,000 electric bikes, and they recorded a 30% increase in ridership with nearly 10 million trips in 2024. And it seems that the city officials are convinced that the expanded BCMAD system could be more than sufficient to meet the needs for the entire city and its suburbs. Maybe, Mylène, you want to comment on that? Because I know that you're quite interested in what's going on in Madrid, because Lyft is the provider of the bike sharing system, BCMAD, in Madrid.
Yes, thank you, Julien. So I maybe building on what Fredrik said in terms of Spain is losing ground. We really see that Spain is actually becoming a major player in terms of pushing bike share as a part of public transport for the city. So not just as an option here and there, but as an integral part of your public transport. So that's their sustainability in this mode of transport. So electrification, certainly for Spain, has been the key, has been a major factor. Ideal mode of transport, for longer trips, hilly cities, obviously not particularly in Madrid, but hilly cities, it attracts more users. I can use my own example when I joined Lyft in October, and how I used an electric bike to go from a metro to our offices in the suburb, and it was stress-free, it was quick. I arrived to the office sweat-free, so I'm ready for my day. It's an easy way to get to where you need to be, not only for casual rider, but most importantly, for the daily activities. That's really when it becomes sustainable. If we look at Barcelona, for example, 72% of the trips that Bici does are with an electric bike, even though they make up 60% of the fleet. So certainly we have seen a preference for safe electric bike, dock safe electric bike, in terms of increasing the adoption and also increasing the addressable market. People like me, other people that never really wanted to necessarily use bikes or didn't really think that it could meet their needs. So there's certainly, Spain is certainly leading the way there and catching up perhaps, or simply becoming the leader that it is going to be, or it is, in terms of bike share and integrating that bike share in the public transport. So expansion of the bike infrastructure is also very important, because as a user, you want to get to your point, you want to get to your destination safely. So dedicated lane, separation between bike lane and traffic, it just makes things easier that way. And you can also see that there's a certain comfort of having younger users use the bike share, because parents will be comforted by the fact that they'll get to school safely because there's dedicated lane and there's a separation between the two. More and more public and private partnership vis-a-vis advertising or other sponsorship like Santander, for example, in London. And again, it's really about integrating bike share as mobility as a service. You use strategically placing the docking station in specific areas, either where there's businesses or metro station or buses, so that together they can really meet the need of a citizen and help us gain time. So we're very happy to be part of Spain bike share service, and more to come.
Thank you, Mylène. Fredrik, what do you believe is behind the significant rise in free-floating bikes, plus 58% in ridership all across Europe? And how important will dockless bikes be in Voi's long-term business strategy? So you just announced today that you were going to release 2 new bikes. Can you tell us a bit more about this?
Yeah, and it's 58% rides growth, you say, and how much is the vehicle growth according to your estimates?
I think we're talking of 18% in fleet size, 18, and 58 in ridership.
Yeah, no, that I think that makes sense. I mean, we see a few cities when we look at absolute numbers driving the total growth. I think London is underestimated on this one even. I think London is even bigger on the free floating bike side, and Paris is also big. Rome is surprisingly big, and well-functioning systems. And I think we'll see much more well-functioning free floating e-bike systems this year. We have to remember that the actual hardware on free floating e-bikes and e-scooters, the e-scooter hardware has been a few generations ahead. So it's really over the last years now we have seen hardware that's strong enough to operate over several years with good user experience, safety, convenience, and also unit economics. So I think that like technological breakthrough on the hardware and the firmware and IoT side will accelerate the e-bikes growth even more in the coming years. And also we should remember that the e-bikes as a vehicle and as a concept is generally more accepted than the e-scooters still. Just people are used to bikes across different demographic groups and so on.
Yeah, do you think that there are two? I mean, if you compare the people who are using your bikes and the people who are using your scooters, do you think we're talking of two different target groups or the same people?
I mean, they're mainly overlapping, but there are some, when you look at the edges, there are differences. For e-bikes, slightly longer rides, of course, slightly older user group. In some cities, more female riders. They feel more safe on an e-bike than on an e-scooter. Versus the e-scooter shorter distances, slightly more male, and slightly younger demographic group.
Okay, Benjamin, but maybe one question for you. Yeah, you want to add something, Fredrik?
No, as I see it, it's clear that all cities in Europe will want micromobility. May it be e-bikes, e-scooters, station-based bikes, e-mopeds as well. But if you focus on e-bikes and e-scooters, that's where I have my expertise. Some cities will want both. Most cities, I think, will want both in the long term. Some cities will want only e-bikes. Paris has gone down that direction. Others will mainly focus on e-scooters. So there will be this multimodal platforms that we talked about a few years ago that now is starting to happen.
Thank you, Benjamin. As an insurance company, do you make a difference between bike users and scooter users, and free floating bike users and station-based bike sharing users? Do you make a difference, or is it the same for you, or do you see some differences in the way that the vehicles are being used by the riders?
Yeah, I mean, from our perspective, what we see in terms of from an exposure perspective is very similar to what Fredrik was saying about their experience in terms of average ride lengths. We do see longer rides and people using bikes more often for commuting and in daily use than maybe the e-scooters. And I would also say that the growth in kind of the bike sharing market, I think, is to some extent being driven by regulation. So if you think, for example, in the UK, the e-scooters, you have to have a mandatory UK motor insurance in place, which is quite difficult and has quite limited appetite within the insurance market to cover that. Whereas for a bike sharing operation, you don't need that motor cover. Indeed, you don't necessarily need to have any rider liability cover, although many operators do choose to provide that cover for their riders. There's a lot of discussion within the underwriting community as to, from a safety perspective, which ones are safer, e-scooters or e-bikes. I think you can make arguments on both sides. So you look at the scooters, it's they're a lot lighter, you tend to go a lot slower, and very few accidents tend to happen where you're involving other road users. But on the flip side, if you look at an e-bike, they're a heavier vehicle, they go slightly faster, but people are more comfortable and confident on them, and other road users are a lot more used to those to those vehicles and sharing the road with them. So I think you've got to kind of get the balance right when you're looking at it from a risk perspective. I think as well, when you look at the station-based versus the free floating, that's quite an interesting discussion as well, particularly from a risk perspective. Certainly what we see within the free floating space is the liability of the operators is much more of a consideration, because typically you're relying on your users to make sure that the vehicles are parked correctly, that they're not in the way of other pavement users or other public space users, and that increasingly causes a bit more of a general liability exposure. So for people, potentially tripping over the bikes or knocking into them or tampering with them. Whereas with the station-based, you have a lot more control around those areas. So they're all considerations that we're looking at from an insurance perspective in terms of how to make the best underwriting decisions and help the operators themselves manage risk.
Thank you, Benjamin. One question from Mylène and from Fredrik. Do you see each other as competitors? I mean, 2 or 3 years ago, if you asked Voi who are the competitors, and I guess Fredrik would say, well, Lime, Dot, Tier, Bolt, but they will not mention Nextbike or PBSC, Lyft, or 15. But do you think that it has changed? I mean, if we see what's going on in London, where free-floating bikes are making 3 times more trips than the Santander bike station-based bike sharing system, and the opposite in Madrid, where the success of the PCMAT service has led the city to decide to ban free-floating bikes and free-floating scooters. So do you see each other as competitors now, or you think you're still running in your lane?
Okay, I'm going to start. I think it depends on the city. At the end of the day, we're answering a need from the city, otherwise we wouldn't exist. And the city, depending on their structure and their priorities and their urban planning, and whether or not they're investing in a clear plan for electrification and etc., they have different methods to ensure that mobility is served in different ways to the citizens. So to me, the way I see it is that both models right now are operating in parallel. They have been operating in parallel for a while. So if the trend continues, there's users that use both, of course, but they're meeting different needs. And certainly they are integrated within different structure, contractual structure. Absolutely, they have a completely different structure contractually as well. So are they complementary? I think they are. There's different benefits to both systems, of course. Do they provide flexibility? Yes, they provide flexibility. Are they integrated the same way in terms of public system? Not quite. Station bikes and dock bike are more integrated and integratable into an overall scheme of public transportation. So both models, different users. Sometimes users go back and forth, but different needs. Station bike, more reliable, predictable, well integrated into public transit, strategically located for first and last mile. Free floating, maybe more flexible as well, but convenient, short, casual riders, continuous trips. So they're complementary. So far they exist together. We'll see what the future holds.
Thank you, Mylène. Fredrik, same question. Do you see PBSC, do you see Lyft urban services, or maybe the services which are being operated thanks to the systems provided by Lyft Urban Solutions? Do you see them as competitive? Or do you
so I mean there are several layers to that one. I think the overall mission for both of us is to get more people using micromobility solutions. So in that sense, it's complementary. Then, as Mylène said, on a city level, it will be in some situations like competitive situation, but more on the policy side of things, and where I think policymakers sometimes are going wrong and not acting in the taxpayers' best interest is when they are subsidizing one mode, and that has been station-based historically heavily, either through advertising or I agree on that Spain has improved their station-based bike systems, but it has mainly been through EU subsidies going into Spanish station-based bike systems. And the situation is that in quite a few situations, the station-based bike systems wouldn't go around and wouldn't survive without subsidies if they had to price the service with positive unit economics and above what the production cost per ride is. And it's not anything against Mylène or Lyft or station-based bike operators. It's just how the market has where the market comes from and where the market is.
Okay, thank you, Fredrik. We'll have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, but I'm already taking one question from the audience, a question from Mark, and I think that's maybe something for you, Mylène. Is there a risk to see a decline in ridership in some cities where the systems are nearing their end of life, especially maybe in London or Brussels? So what can we do about this? Because indeed, we see that when the services are being renewed, like in Madrid, we're seeing a surge in ridership, but on the opposite, in some cities where services have not been maybe renewed, we're seeing a decline in ridership. So what can we do about this?
So specifically, thank you for your question. Specifically regarding the two example provided, there's no indication that the station will not be renewed. So I realize for Brussels, there's been a delay, but there's no indication that the system is not going to be renewed and expanded. Certainly Belgium is a biking city. I mean, they bike everywhere. I have a few Belgian friends, and I think the bicycle is their best friend, that's for sure. So it is a biking city. It is completely part of their culture. So there's no indication that the system or the station-based system will not be renewed. And also, when you implement a station-based system into the background of your city, it's an infrastructure that is embedded in your city. It is part of your infrastructure, your physical infrastructure. So it is adopted in a way as a visual artifacts of your city itself. So it would be a change to get rid of the artifacts and suddenly you have a different vision of the city itself. You know, as the city plan their urban planning, they plan their expansion, they look at the demographics growth of their city, how it's going to go. And of course, it is subsidized at time by EU or by government, but it is used, hopefully it's used, public money is used responsibly to make sure that the system that is being integrated in the city is used by the citizen, is placed in strategic location, is integrated with other mode of transport. For example, I'm a pedestrian. I want to be able to walk on my sideways as well. There's dogs. They want to be able to walk on the sideways. So a structural way to approach state bike share in a way that everybody gets their part of the puzzle. Everybody is okay with the different systems that operate and that are integrated in the city. So in my opinion, Belgium, it's a biking city, that's for sure. London, the infrastructure is massive. It's already integrated into the visual of what London is. And there is absolutely no indication that these systems will not be renewed. I hope it answers your question.
Thank you for the insights. And we're looking forward to see the new services in Brussels and London maybe in a few years. Let's talk about scooters now. All right, so as expected, or was it expected by the people from the industry, but we are seeing a decrease in 2024, 16% decrease in the fleet size. We have now around 440,000 scooters available across Europe, and also a decrease in ridership, 9% decrease. So the good news is that it means that if the fleet size has decreased by 16% and the ridership has decreased by 9%, it means that the TVD has increased a bit. This downturn can be attributed to new regulations or fleet caps or bans in several major European cities like Berlin, Brussels, and Madrid. It's also the first year that we saw the full impact of Paris' decision to ban scooters. The decision took place in September or August 2023. And so in last year index, the 2023 index, we were still recording 9 months of by scooter usage in Paris, but this year in the 2024 report there is none. Other factors that may have contributed to the decrease in the scooter fleet size and ridership is maybe the merger between DOT and TIER, and that in their decision to exit some markets, some unprofitable markets, the disappearance and the rebirth of super pedestrian. It was a US operator that go bankrupt, and the European operation of super pedestrian has been purchased by a European operator. On a more positive note, despite all these challenges, it seemed that scooter remained very popular in many parts of Europe, and especially in the Nordic countries. And there is still potential for growth. When we look at 2025, I think the industry will face a mix of challenges and opportunities. Challenges, for example, in Italy, where the introduction of a new highway code has already caused a 30% decrease in ridership, and seems could be even worse for the year 2025. Basically, people are supposed to wear a helmet when riding the scooters in Italy now, and there are some other restrictions specific to scooters and not to bikes, by the way. And also, we already talked about this, but the city of Madrid decided to ban all scooters and all dockless bikes. So that's maybe not a good news for the Spanish market, but let's see. We are seeing some very interesting opportunities in certain markets. In Oslo, for example, the city of Oslo has announced its decision to double the fleet of scooters from 8,000 to 16,000. And we also see in UK and Ireland potential growth opportunity for the scooter operators. Question maybe for Fredrik. He's back to his office, I think. Fredrik, were you expecting a sharper decline in fleet size and ridership, considering all the changes that took place in 2024 in Paris, in Berlin, in Brussels, and Madrid, and in Italy? Or are you quite satisfied with this? And maybe you can comment on your own numbers, I mean, Voi numbers. Are you seeing a decline like this, or maybe it's not related directly to your business?
No, I think you summarized the situation quite well. Once again, Southern Europe lagging behind. Mainly here, Spain and Italy, but yeah, Paris as well, as you see. What was interesting though, Julien, you remember this because I think we talked about it. When Paris said they would ban scooters, they had this stupid referendum and all of that. There was this notion that, okay, this will spread to all markets, especially in France, but also outside of France. The German cities will look at Paris, London will look at Paris, Stockholm, Oslo will look at Paris. Again, I think it was a bit. Myopic, which is often the situation with Paris, especially the people living in Paris think the whole world is Paris, but it's not. As we didn't see that cascade effect to many other cities, I would say. But our numbers are public now. We kept the fleet flat 23 to 24. We improved revenue with just below 15%. We improved profitability a lot. We increased rides pretty much according to this, but we had a significantly higher TVD utilization per day than what is in this report.
Okay.
For several reasons. We run a strategy that is we want to drive utilization. We're fine with the lower price per ride. And also, of course, the geographical exposure we had, where we know that some larger Eastern European markets have significantly lower revenue per vehicle per day than, for example, Stockholm, Oslo, Cambridge, and some other markets. But I think pretty much according to plan, and I think what will happen now, consolidation, of course, has been good for the industry, because if you take Paris again as an example, the tender that was in 2019, 2020, I think there was something like 18 or 20 bidders for that for 3 positions in Paris. That is, of course, not the situation anymore. In quite a few of the cities we go for, there were rather 2, 3, max 4 competitors, and the market has matured which helps things a lot with politicians and decision makers, and also collaboration within the industry. You get less of a prisoner's dilemma situation than we had a few years ago when there were 15, 20 competitors. There was always someone who benefited from doing crazy things on price, promising crazy things and so on. And that, of course, it bites you in the tail eventually.
Okay, we're not going to name these operators. Thank you, Fredrik. Benjamin, one question for you. If we have a look at what's going on in Italy, where the Italian authorities have decided to implement a new highway code, which is quite tough for people who want to ride the scooters, especially because they need to wear a helmet now. So as an insurance company, what do you think of this? Because on the one hand, of course, wearing a helmet is a good thing for protecting users from injuries, but at the same time, we know that it's going to have an impact on the ridership of these services, which maybe is not a good thing for development of micromobility, and the fact that maybe these services could be, on the long term, a way to replace car ownership and car usage in cities. So how do you find a balance between trying to protect the riders and making sure that it does not impact the dynamic of this industry?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's all about getting the balance right. I mean, we would, from an insurance and risk perspective, we're always going to advocate for kind of the safest rides that are possible. And when you look at e-scooters in particular, over 80% of the deaths that happen and 50% of the injuries are, all vehicles that all are involved with heavier vehicles. And so as much you can do to protect the rider when they are involved in a collision, it is a good thing. But absolutely, the challenge you've got is making sure that the riders feel safe and that they are able to get on the scooters and take them out. I mean, in my view, I think in the short term you will probably see the usership decline, and obviously that is reflected in the numbers that you're presenting today. But I think over a longer term, as people get more comfortable, it also opens up the market to a new type of rider who may feel safer using a helmet, or may feel safer with those kind of extra regulations that are put in place. And so over time, you might see a slower increase and a wider adoption across the industry in general. I guess the other thing that we've seen with some of the clients that we work with in the space is it not necessarily being regulation-led. And I think any regulations that are introduced in this space do need to be proportionate. And sometimes it tends to be either an all or nothing approach. And very often the regulators aren't kind of taking that middle and proportional way. But what a lot of operators are doing themselves to kind of encourage good behaviors and encourage risk management within the rider community. So whether that's incentivizing riders to wear helmets by giving them a cheaper ride, or incentivizing riders to park better when they're finished using the vehicles. So I think all of the things that an operator can do to incentivize those good risk behaviors actually helps avoid the need for the regulations to then step in to almost force the good behavior. It's much better to kind of use that carrot as the operator, rather than relying on the authorities to bring it in.
Thank you, Benjamin. Fredrik, is there a good way? Have you found a way to crack the issue of the helmet or the mandatory helmets for your services? I mean, it's a tough issue. We know that it has a major impact on ridership, and in my knowledge, no operator has found the right way to provide a helmet to scooter riders so far. It's something which is being done for moped operators, so they know how to provide that, but the vehicle is a bit larger and there are ways to accommodate maybe one or two helmets. How can you do that with scooter sharing? Fredrik? You're muted, Fredrik, I think, no? Or okay, maybe we're going to be issue with Fredrik anyway. Mylène, one question about shared scooters, because your company Lyft decided last year to stop all activities related to floating bikes or floating scooters. But I know that Lyft has been operating, and maybe is still operating, I don't know, some docked scooters in the US. What can you tell us about this? And do you think there is some potential for the European market?
So yes, dog scooters are part of our product line. So that's for sure. And it's, again, I'm repeating myself, but it's all about what the city needs. So dog scooters to meet the city's need. So a product is only a product if it actually serves a purpose, which is the case in the US. So for example, in the US, like in Chicago, for example, we have dog scooters, which account for about 25% of the trips in 2024. So totaling 680, 700,000 trips, even though that there's only 2,000 scooters deployed in the city. So it is a formula that works in Chicago. A dense city, a lot of people, a lot of density, various demographics, noise, congestion, all that stuff. So it works in Chicago. It works for that city, but they are dog scooters. So the way, could it work in Europe? Perhaps, if the city is open to it and if the city sees that it meets a need, perhaps dog scooter will bring a certain level of structure, reduce the clutter, improve the safety, aligning with European regulation of safety and everything else. There will be a certain amount of operational efficiency, easier rebalancing, maintenance compared to perhaps the free floating market. And with the electrification, less need to swap the battery and charging station. So it could work depending on the policy and what is the city plan in terms of urban planning.
Thank you, Mylène. Maybe now it's time to interact a bit with the audience. Harry, can you please display the poll? Because we have a question for you guys. And the question is about the ridership of scooters and bikes in 2025. Can we display the poll? I don't know. Can you see the polls in the audience? The question? I'm going to try to display it. So, sorry. Okay, the poll is live. So if you click on in the interface, there is a polls button on the bottom right of your screen. And the question is the following. Which mode will generate more trips in 2025? Shared bikes or shared scooters? Taking into account that in 2024, shared bikes we generated 337 million trips if you combine free floating bikes and stationary bikes in Europe. And shared scooters generated 440 million trips in 2024. But if you take into account the trends that we have shown you with a very impressive surge in the ridership of free floating bikes with plus 58%, with maybe a smaller growth in station-based bike ridership, but a decline in scooter ridership, do you think that shared bikes being station-based or free floating will make more trips in 2025 compared to shared scooters?
Should I start there?
And I will ask the panelists maybe to comment on this and to make their own prediction about this. And we'll compare with the answers from the audience. But maybe Fredrik, you can answer this question. Do you think that there will be more rides with free floating bikes and station-based bikes in 2025, more rides than scooter?
I think of those three modes, free floating e-bikes will continue to see the fastest growth trajectory. Because if you think of it, I mean the number of station-based bikes is very rigid, with very long procurement periods and bid periods. It's like 6, 8, 10 years. So not that much will change on the fleet size. On the e-scooter side, I think the same. Hopefully, we will see some fleet growth, but I don't expect it to increase with 30, 40, 50% because we're quite penetrated in quite a few of the important markets. On the e-bike side, it's the opposite. Still very low penetration of high quality high quality free floating e-bikes. So that one should grow faster the coming years.
Thank you, Fredrik. Mylène, you want to comment on this? So far, we have 58 people who have taken part in the vote, or 56 people who have taken part in the vote. And I would say that 2/3 of the people who have responded think that shared bikes will make more trips compared to scooters, and 1/3 of the people think that shared scooters will make more trips than shared bikes. Mylène, you want to comment on that? What's your prediction for 2025?
I think I agree with the trend. So if you look at the numbers for 2024, station bikes are likely to lead the ridership. So there's obviously, if you look at the numbers, there's a lot more free floating bikes, absolutely. But if you do the proportion, there's for the number of station bike, and you translate that in rideshare and station bike definitely correlate. So station bike creates an increase in rideshare. And the trend that we see in 2024 seems to go that way. So the growth of electrified fleet, for example, the expansion of the bike-friendly infrastructure, the fact that the scooter regulation are tightening in some cities is beneficial to station bikes. So I think the trend will be station bike.
Okay, thank you. Benjamin, you're agnostic. Mylène is obviously more in favor of station-based bike sharing, and Fredrik is maybe more will be more in favor of free-floating bikes or free-floating scooters. But you are agnostic. So what do you think?
Yeah, in my view, I think we are going to see the free-floating bikes be the kind of the area of fastest growth. I think it allows the operators to be a lot more agile in entering different boroughs and getting riders on the ground very quickly. So yeah, from my perspective, we definitely see the growth in the free floating shared bikes is kind of the main thrust for 2025.
Okay. Let's talk a bit more about 2025 because we have been reviewing the numbers for 2024 and the trend, the insights. So what do you think is in store for us for 2025? How do you see the markets heading for? More vehicles, more trips, fewer vehicles making more trips, or fewer vehicles and fewer trips? What are your trends? And what do you think could be a game changer for the industry in 2025? Is it to be a technological innovation, or regulatory changes, or new business model? What can change the industry in 2025? What's going to be what's going to drive the changes in the industry in 2025? Fredrik, maybe you want to comment on that.
So, for the free floating players, there has been a lot of consolidation. I think there will be a bit more consolidation. Will it happen in 25? I don't know. But over the coming 2-3 years, we should see some more consolidation, taking down the number of large players another time. On the regulatory side, as I said before, I've never been as optimistic and confident since we started Voi in 2018 as I am now. We have been through some of the boom and bust and chaos that we saw in the first years. It led to some collateral damage. For example, Paris pausing their e-scooter scheme, but that happens. So overall, we're having very good conversations with politicians and decision makers out in cities want to do micromobility in their way, learning from each other, which I'm very positive and enthusiastic about. And on the Voi side, we're very excited for our new vehicle lineup, the scooter, the 2 bikes. Operate these models multimodally in several cities across Europe, scaled. So that's something I am very excited about. And also on the product side, everything we're doing now on the software, ML, AI side, think of the orchestration layer of all our operational tasks. Who should do a battery swap? Who should do a repair? And all of that, I think is super, super exciting and something we will focus a lot on this year.
In which market do you see growth opportunity, Fredrik? UK, Ireland, because for the moment it's mostly untapped market compared to Germany, where we have already several cities which are equipped with shared-scooters. So where are your targets, or where do you see growth geographically in 2025?
Yeah, I think for the whole industry, it would be, as you say, it's UK, Ireland, it's UK, Ireland, and France, Italy, Spain, where there is so much untapped potential still. For Voi specifically, it will be these markets, but also Germany. Back to the mid-size and long-tail German cities that Voi hasn't been operating in yet. So a bit of everything on our side. So we are not worried at all about running out of attractive places to put our fleets in and provide micromobility in this year.
Thank you, Mylène. Where do you see growth potential in 2025, and what could be the game changer in 2025? Innovation, technology innovation, regulations, business models.
So revolutionary technology innovation, I think the technology innovation is a must. So it is already embedded in the industry. So I wouldn't call it as a game changer in 2025. So perhaps in 2025, game changer obviously is shifting public perception. Advocacy is key. So we have to promote bike share. As mentioned by my other panelists, there's a lot of conversation with city official. They want bike share to be introduced. They feel there's a need for bike share. So can it be more than a leisure activity embedded into the transportation industry, mobility as a service, etc. So strong advocacy for this type of mobility for sure. Integration into other mode of transport, and also a blend into the city infrastructure. Of course, at Lyft, we have dock station, and they're embedded into the infrastructure and the urban planning of the city. So enhancing the fact that dock station and bike share is not disruptive to other mode of transport, whether it's pedestrian, moped, or so they coexist, and there's no conflict, physical conflict, and everybody maximizes the resistance, and everybody gets what they need in order to go from point A to point B. In terms of what do we think, is it more vehicle available, more trip, fewer vehicle available, more trip, fewer vehicle and fewer trip? We think it's going to be more vehicle available and more trips. And as Fredrik said, there's quite a few opportunities. So it's about everything, UK, Ireland, Spain, Belgium, etc. So it's a very exciting time for the industry, and we're looking forward to be a strong part of it. And the future seems to be very much electric, even though there's a lot of European cities that also favor mechanical bikes, but there's also more and more an integration of future electric mode of transport for e-bike, as it is for other mode of transport as well. Growing user demand, increasing adoption, increasing the addressable market. Micromobility is part of the daily journey from point A to point D, stopping at B and C, fleet expansion on underserved areas, electrification, charging infrastructure. So a lot happening, and an exciting time for the industry.
Okay, and you, Benjamin, what do you think is a game changer for 2025? Or maybe there will be not game changers, just going to be the continuation of what we have seen in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, for 2025, I think, it is a continuation of what we've seen in 2024. But I think, building on what Mylène has said, the game changer is really that integration across multi-different modes and multi-mode of transportation. I think if we can get operators to collaborate more, where you can take a scooter and then you can take some public transport and then potentially an e-bike or car share afterwards, and really build that into a seamless consumer experience consistently. I think that will be a game changer for the adoption of shared mobility across Europe. I think as well, the other piece is, the consistency of regulation, ensuring that they're appropriately regulated. The requirements for operators to operate in the cities is kind of the same across the various different geographies and the different modes. So again, if you look at the e-scooter trials which are happening in the UK, making sure that once they get fully legalized and fully brought on as kind of a full-time option for shared mobility, that the regulations that accompany them are proportionate to the risks that they're bringing to the industry.
Thank you. We are approaching the end of this webinar, so maybe now it's time for the Q&A session. So to all the people in the audience, please feel free to ask any questions by using the chat box, or there is a questions feature. There is a feature specifically for questions, so don't hesitate. So on this slide, you can see a QR code. If you flash this QR code, then you can download the report. But as I mentioned previously, all the members, all the people who have registered for the webinar will receive directly in their inbox a copy of the report. It should be sent right after the webinar. So maybe first questions. One for Fredrik. What is your view on public and private partnerships, where Voi would receive subsidies from local authorities to operate as it is doing today, but allowing more affordable pricing and better control from the city over performance and equity? That's for you, Fredrik. Are you ready to take to accept subsidies from cities in exchange for maybe more control from the city and more equity, more concern about the equity and deployment of your vehicles all across the city?
I mean, if you believe that cities are great mobility operators, then the answer is probably yes. I personally don't think so. So I'd rather build a standalone mobility service that can stand on its own legs, on its mobility revenues, and continue to improve the cost base so much and the production cost per ride, so we can run this. Run these types of services without subsidies. Because as soon as you get dependent on subsidies, you have lost your independence. Then there will be a lot of push on the control, as you say, Julien, from cities, which I don't think is in the interest of the citizens living in that city and the people who want to use a great mobility service.
Okay, thanks, Fredrik. So I do understand that you prefer to keep your independence and run the service as you want to run it, rather than just taking some subsidies but not being able to do what you want to do and what is your vision for your service. Interesting point of view, because I know that in the industry, some of your competitors are more willing to try to get some subsidies or micro subsidies from operators. Maybe that's a kind of relief for Mylène, because if the free-floating operators are not willing to ask for subsidies from cities, it means that your business model with cities is going to be preserved, no? Mylène.
I mean, we answer the city's needs. So yes, there's public funding, and there is a responsibility to use public fund responsibly, of course. And certainly the way we address it is by providing the city that we partner with the best system that they can have, that will promote or deter theft, deter vandalism, have the best IoT, so that they can protect the asset, and therefore they can use public fund properly to meet the city's need and to really have mobility or an integrated mobility offering for their citizen. We also ensure that our product and our system and our solution allow for saving over the total cost of ownership. Because we talk about CapEx is great, but then the real challenge is OpEx, because we want these assets to live or to operate for a certain number of years without impacting, let's say, what was forecasted as cost of operation. So, yes, perhaps the answer is yes. We meet the city's need. They do public-private funding. We can work with that, and it's all good.
All right, thank you. One question from Bertrand Floros from Paris, asking if we are afraid that e-scooter bans could spread to other cities after Paris in 2023 and Madrid in 2024. I think, Fredrik, you partially already answered this question, because you seem to be quite happy and confident as regard the evolution of the regulation on the European market. But so do you think there are some threats in other cities, or are you fine with this?
not that much more. Yeah, not that much to add. As I said, when the situation in Paris happened, a lot of people said this would spread to all cities. It didn't. Most cities didn't. Most cities again don't care what Paris does. They have their own ideas, their own vision, their own plans. They don't care about Paris.
Don't tell this to the mayor of Paris, because she thinks she has a great influence on other cities all across Europe.
Well, I mean, when she does inspirational things that are good for the citizens, but when they end up in this, it's not only the Paris e-scooter situation, but when they make stupid decisions that I think most people don't agree with, that is not inspiring to anyone. It's not inspiring for people in other cities or decision makers in other cities. So then it's rather a backlash. And as I said, there will be micromobility in all cities. It's just a question of what shape and form fits best to your city.
All right, thank you. Well, I think time has come to close this webinar. It's 4:15, exactly on time. I would like to thank you all the people in the audience for your participation and for your questions. I would like to thank our panelists. So Mylène Tassy from Lyft Urban Solutions, Benjamin Hindson from Aon, and Fredrik from Voi. Please feel free to contact us if you have any other questions, and remember that you're going to receive a copy of the report by the end of the day. And I think that's it for today. Please, we'd like to see you in next webinar that we will organize with Fluctuo. Thank you all, and see you next time.